But he has another identity, one that I'll reveal tonight on The Inside Peak.
Ian Peak is the host of the infamous tabloid newscast, The Inside Peak. But before becoming the host, Ian was a low-rate journalist craving for a leverage to jumpstart his career. Ian is beyond arrogant and is very weaselly. He also gets joy out of exploiting, blackmailing, and ruining people's lives, which ultimately lets us know that Ian Peak is a sadistic human being on top of everything else. Ian rose to fame after stealing a special device that turned him intangible, allowing him to walk through walls and get dirt on Gotham City's celebrities. And with that ever so brief summary out the way, let me quickly go ahead and mention the episode that I'll be going over and discuss how I'll break it down. The episode we'll be looking at is titled Sneak Peek, and as usual, there will be some skipping within the episode itself, but like always, that's just for the sake of staying focused on our villain of the day. With that said, let's dive right into Sneak Peek. The episode begins with Ian Peak on air talking about celebrity scandals. After the show ends, Ian tells his assistant, who asked how he got all the footage, that it's a trade secret before walking off. Later that night, a crime boss named Jimmy Lin sneaks into City Hall for a meeting with DA Sam Young to testify about his gang's activities. Neither of them knows that Lin has been followed into the building by a mysterious man seemingly composed of flashing black and blue matter capable of passing through walls. Unnoticed by either man, the mysterious figure films Lin's testimony until Sam sees him and summons a guard. The mysterious man manages to quickly disable the guard, but then Batman arrives and a short chase along with the fight initiates. While Batman is down, the man makes a quick getaway and touches a device on his belt, which switches off the black and blue energy field and reveals the mysterious figure to be none other than Ian Peak. There's truthfully not much to take away from any of this. However, it's very likely that the reason Ian enjoys his job so much isn't just because of the money. His main reason for loving his job could potentially come from the stalking factor that comes with his job. However, this is just speculation. But by the looks of it, the power of the device awoken something in him, and whatever was woken up has now shrouded Ian's mind in corruption. So much so that he blew up Batman. Now, it's very unlikely that the explosion would ever actually kill Batman, but it's still an attempted murder nonetheless. And now it's time for our first skip within this video. The Inside Peak comes on again, and Ian reveals the events of the previous night, in which Ian tells all about Lin's meeting with DA Sam Young, and after the show, Ian takes pills for his stomach. Keep this in mind, this will come back. I wasn't just bringing this up just because. Terry then realizes the connection and heads out to see Ian Peak. Batman confronts Peak at the studio, but Peak denies any knowledge. And before Batman can further interrogate him, Lin and his gang enter the studio and try to kill Peak. Batman is able to stop them, but loses sight of Peak, who escapes and plants a camera in the Batmobile. Unaware of the camera, Batman returns to the Batcave, talks to Bruce Wayne, and removes his mask. All of this is caught on the spy camera that Peak planted in the Batmobile. So, I know I've already said this, but there's just truthfully not much to say about Ian during any of these encounters. However, Ian's arrogance is on full display during said encounters. The next morning, Terry is woken up by Matt, who alerts him on the news about Batman. Once he gets up, Terry sees a teaser for Peak's latest episode, revealing footage from the Batcave as well as two blurred images of himself and Bruce Wayne. Ian Peak promises to reveal the identities of both Batman and his mentor later on the night edition of The Inside Peak. Terry then receives a phone call from Bruce, who has found the spy cam, but can do nothing to stop the show from airing. While Terry blames himself for their situation, Bruce accepts the fact that their identities are going to be revealed, but is annoyed that someone like Ian Peak had to be the one to expose them. So, similar to the encounter with Batman and Ian at the studio, the scenes with Ian on the air really show how overly confident and arrogant Ian truly is. The same scenes also show us just how much pleasure Ian takes in ruining people's lives by exposing their darkest secrets to the entire world. At Peake's office, Ian is having trouble with his stomach again and gets medicine to soothe his pain. He then notices Batman's sudden arrival and invites him inside, but addresses him by his real name, startling him. Upon discovering their identities, Pete confronts Terry with his deduction that Bruce Wayne was the original Batman. Ignoring Pete's questions, Terry reveals that while he doesn't care what happens to himself, he still demands for Bruce to be left out of this, considering all that he's done for Gotham. Pete realizes how much Bruce means to Terry, but still refuses, and then mockingly asks for an interview, causing Terry to leave. Ian refusing Terry's request and proceeding to ask for an interview is the perfect example of what I've been talking about. This moment highlights Ian's lack of care for others, as well as highlighting his arrogance, as he truly believes he's bested both versions of the Batman. Terry returns home and finds that, along with the rest of Gotham City, both Matt and Mary are excited about seeing the show. Meanwhile, as Pete is getting ready for the show, he takes a tablet for his stomach pains, but it seems to have gotten much worse, which we'll see why. Ian looks down in horror and sees that his body is partially phased even without the belt. Skipping ahead again, Bruce appears at Pete's studio in response to an urgent summoning. Pete says his body is starting to lose its substance and is now slowly becoming completely intangible even without the belt, and asks Bruce to use his company's resources to find a cure. After Bruce basically says no and says that there are other companies, and after Ian brings up Taka, saying he interviewed him, Bruce realizes that Pete not only stole the belt, but he was also the one who started the fire that killed Taka. Pete admits it and shamelessly defends his actions, saying that he had to have it, claiming that to him, the belt was a chance to kick his career into high gear. This brings up a factor that ultimately takes Ian from an arrogant Weasley Roach to an arrogant Weasley Roach murderer. All for the sake of fame, Ian not only manipulated others and destroyed their lives with their own secrets, but he also became a killer just to further his career. Disgusted, Bruce refuses to help him, and Pete threatens to expose both him and Terry. Bruce sees that Pete's body is further deteriorating and keeps walking, aware that time is not on Pete's side. Pete tries to give back the footage of the cave by throwing it at Bruce's feet, but Bruce still refuses. Enraged, Pete attacks and nearly kills Bruce, but Batman arrives at the last second, like always, and saves Bruce. Pete continues to fight and raises a gun, but his whole hand becomes intangible, followed by his entire body. While still at the mercy of gravity, Ian sinks through the floor, yelling for help. Batman chases after Pete, while Bruce picks up the disc containing the spy camera footage. Batman just manages to reach the lowest basement level as Pete is seeking through it. Batman then tells Pete to control his solidity so he could pull him up, and it seems to work at first, but Pete ultimately loses all control and helplessly sinks into the ground. Bruce then arrives and explains that in his phased state, Pete will likely keep on falling until he reaches the center of the earth, and after that explanation, Bruce says this:
"It's about as inside as you can get."
And that would be the last time we ever saw Ian Peak, which, honestly, I'm kinda glad he never returned, as outside of the device he used, he didn't really stand out as a villain. Granted, he did figure out the identities to both versions of the Batman, and he did kill someone to further his career, as well as ruining countless celebrity lives. So I have to give evil credit where evil credit is due. However, outside of what I just said, and outside of the description I gave earlier, there's nothing else to really say about him. Ian Peak is seriously nothing more than what I had mentioned, which is an overly arrogant Weasley Roach murderer. So now we'll move off of the life and personality of Ian Peak and on to his designs and voice actor. Ian's normal design is nothing to really brag about, as there's nothing that really stands out about it. However, However, his design while using the device is where his character's design shines. From the colors to the intangible design itself, it was all executed perfectly. And while on the topic of this design, there's something I wanted to quickly mention. The design really reminds me of the news anchor that we see throughout some of the episodes, such as Rats. But anyway, now we'll move on to Ian Peake's voice actor, with that being Michael McKean. Michael McKean also voiced Dr. Marcus Edmund in the Zeta Project, as well as Dr. Bartholomew Walper in The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2. However, some of you may know him from Better Call Saul, where he plays Chuck McGill. Also, while talking about Michael McKean, I should add that he used an Australian accent for the character of Ian Peake, which if you ask me was a great touch. So huge shout out to Michael McKean. With all that said though, this has been the insufferable prying of Ian Peake. If you made it this far into the video, comment down your favorite episode from Batman Beyond. I always love to hear y'all's opinions. Also, like always, huge shout out to Mercenary X84 for still being a member. I know I say this every time, but I truly can't thank you enough. I also can't thank each and every one of you enough for supporting me. I seriously appreciate all of the love and support. Oh, and one more thing, sorry for talking more about the episode rather than Ian, which in turn made this video kinda run longer for seemingly no reason. There actually is a reason for this. Since there isn't much to say about him outside of what I did, I figured I'd just let his actions speak for themselves. But anyways, with my ramblings finally out the way, it's been ugly, and I'll see y'all in the next one.